Okay, welcome back. I hope you've seen some of my other videos so far. So this is our materials today. So we've got water pot, palette, watercolours, watercolour paper and some brushes and some very dirty water. I'll explain in a minute. So I'm using these watercolour postcards. They're really cute and they're really nice just for sort of super quick pictures. They're pre-printed on the back, as you saw, with the little postcard. I got these from Sea Whites, but you could also buy a little stamp, so you could cut your watercolour paper up and then buy a postcardy stamp to put on the back, which would be really nice. I'm using this tiny little travel palette with these little pans in, mainly because it was there and it's in my sketching set, which is sort of always hanging around. But you could totally use regular tubes of paint. I'm not a massive fan of these tiny pans because you kind of have to scrub around to make up so much paint, and you can see here I am sort of lathering it up, trying to get some colours. I tend to be a little bit lazy making enough paint up, and then I think, oh, I need some more paint, and I just add more and more water in. If you didn't see my Quink demo, where I use Quink ink, then do go and watch that. But right before this demo I filmed my Quink one, which is why my water is so filthy, because I was still too lazy to go and get clean water. Okay, so this technique is so simple. First thing you do, clean water or slightly dirty water, wash over a wet section. So think about your composition. This is a major thing. I dash into these really quickly without thinking about composition. So try and do like 1/3 sky, 2/3 ground, or the opposite way round, 2/3 sky, 1/3 ground. Really think about that composition. Having a split half and half is not so nice. So into this I've used ultramarine and a brown mixed together there. I've also mixed up some browns and greens in here. There's some phthalo blue there with a bit of brown burnt umber into it, just to mute the colour. And you can see that I'm adding and adding the paint into that water. So here we go. So I'm running this water along. I've got this really nice soft squirrel brush, which isn't massive because I'm working quite small, but it puts lots of water down. And I'm using that paint there. It's kind of like a ochre that I've got in there, and a green, and it's almost pure paint straight from the palette, straight from the pans. And I'm letting it run into that water that's on the paper, and you can see I'm twisting the paper around. Look at it running down, just about see that, and letting those colours mix. And you can definitely see on the blue at the sky at the top how you've got that dark line of watercolour, and then it's bled its way through that clean water, cleanish, up into the sky, and you get these lovely sort of changes of colour and texture. This is a really nice paper as well. It's a watercolour paper, so it's got a nice watercolour texture to it, and it's really nice and thick. I think it's about 320 grams, something like that. It might even be 350 grams. Just going to take a little bit of that blue out, just dampen it really to let it bleed, just so that blue isn't really sitting at the bottom there. Take a bit more blue into it, almost pure paint. You can see how dark that is, but it's so wet still. The actual paper is really wet. it's really playing with that watercolour. Oh, the sun's come out, lovely. It's really playing with those things with the watercolour that you can't control, and it's letting the watercolour be completely uncontrollable. So I've took some brown here, really using that brown and green to mix some really nice colours for the field in the bottom here. I think one of the main things with this technique and just letting these colours run through is you kind of have to wait sometimes for it to dry. It can be so wet that you need to just leave it to one side to dry. I'll do that in a minute. I'll start another one in a minute, but I want to get some more colours down on here and build this up a little bit. And I'll work back into it later. Another one. I'm going to try and learn how to be a little bit clearer, lifting those colours out. I'm using an ultramarine here, so I'm getting an ultramarine up. Let's see, really blue. And using that Alrizia red. It's like quite a deep sort of burgundy red colour. Mixing that up. Look at me, trying to mix enough colour up. Oh. As I said, I would much rather use the tubes, but I do end up with an awful lot of paint left over. Okay, have another little think. Here we go. So I'm putting the water down. You can see it there. See that sort of shiny on the paper? I'm going to try and be a little bit more controlled with the water. So you can see I've left little dry areas in the sky there. And those dry areas are obviously going to stay white, just because the paint's not going to move through them as much. Let's try it now. I'm just going to run along the bottom of that wet area there with this purpley colour I've mixed. There we go. And you can see it already bleeding up into that wet. Let's give it a little run around. I'm painting outside in my garden and it's so nice, would you believe it? That you can see the paint is actually drying a bit quick. So dampen it up. Because this is so wet, your paper is really wet all over where you're painting into at the moment. You don't get massive cauliflowers with this, so you can add water back into it. So if you want to get things to move a little bit more, you can add the colour in and you can add clear water in. Not going too crazy, but because it's all so wet, you won't get lots of cauliflowers. You can make it do it. You can leave it to dry for a bit and then work back in over the top or into the sides of it and create those cauliflowers. There we go, that's a bit nicer. A bit of contrast in the sky there. I'm not patient enough, look. You should leave that for longer. Okay, so I'm coming along the bottom here, and I just want to leave a tiny line. If you touch this section at the bottom, your ground, to your sky, obviously it's just going to bleed straight up into your sky. If you're using similar colours, you might not mind. So I'm doing a C here. And obviously I can let these two touch, although I'm going to lose that really strong pinky purple across the middle, but I can put that in later. But obviously on my first one, where I had the blue sky and that greeny ochre of the field, I don't really want those to touch because I don't want them to bleed into each other and have this weird sort of green sunset. So do think about being very careful here. And it seems like, you know, you think, oh, I've gone way too dark. That seems like really pigmented paint there that I'm adding in. But you can see it already, it's dissolving through. And adding more colour into it to try and get that to bleed even more through. I'm going to work into these later when they dry with a little pen work. I'll show you that in a bit. I'm going to come back into my first one again now it's much drier, and just put some different tones and a little bit of texture into this field. It's just a bit flat and it's not doing anything, so add some dark at the back there so it's got a little bit of depth to it. And you can use those shapes that the watercolours have made themselves, so you can pull it out and enhance them a little bit more. Okay, so I can fiddle about with these for days or not at all, so it's up to you. There's probably a sweet spot somewhere where you fiddle enough and then you stop. Here we go. So I've just put some little birds in there. There we go, and a little bit of grass. Don't forget, visit my website for your art resources, follow me on social media, like this video and subscribe to my channel.